This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
I'd like to begin by thanking you all for coming out tonight. I'm Jamie Webb, Senior Planner for the City of Easthampton. I'm joined tonight by Mayor LaChapelle, our Procurement Officer, Mike Owens, members of the City Council, and our nonprofit housing developer partners at Valley Community Development. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to have a presentation and discussion regarding the city's proposed application for the FY 2024 Community Development Block Grant Program funds. We're planning to apply to the CDBG program to develop construction documents to rehab the town lodging house. I'm going to give a brief presentation about the project and the grant request, and then there'll be opportunity to provide public comment. If technical difficulties occur and the meeting ends abruptly, the hearing will be continued to tomorrow night, Tuesday, March 5th at 5 p.m. and will not resume tonight. All of the meeting connection information will remain the same. Everyone in the meeting tonight will be viewers, muted with your cameras off until it's time for public comment. At that point in time, you can use the raise hand function and you'll be called on to ask your question or give your comment. To make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak, comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Please, if you have any questions or comments after the meeting, or you wish to send an email in support or against, or if you want to sign up for project updates, please email me at jwebb@easthamptonma.gov. I'm going to just take a second to go through how to give your public comment. So again, you're limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and address for the record at the beginning of any comments. Use the raise hand function to signal your intent to provide comment. Once you have been acknowledged by a host, you'll be invited to be a contributor. You must hit accept in order to continue. At that point, you can turn on your microphone and camera and give your comment. So just a little bit about the Community Development Block Grant Program. It's a federal funded program that passes money through the state, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly the Department of Housing and Community Development. And these projects that are funded primarily benefit low to moderate income families and individuals. The projects typically are related to infrastructure improvements, housing rehab, or social services, but they can take other forms as well. We don't receive these funds automatically. We must apply to the grantor every year for a competitive grant. This year, we are eligible up to $950,000. And this public hearing is a requirement for the grant application. Town Lodging House is located at 75 Oliver Street. This is a 1895, sorry, I'm just admitting someone. 1895 map showing the location of the town farm on Oliver Street and some of the surrounding property owners. This is a photo of the town lodging house as it stood somewhere in the mid-1890s. You can see the lodging house in the front, some of the residents sitting at front posing for the photograph, and in the background you can see what was a barn attached to the property. It has since been demolished. Currently, the lodging house is in a state of disrepair. Needs substantial work. I'll get into that later. I'm just going to be showing some photos of the existing building. It's an exterior view of the side of the building. You'll notice the porch is in extremely bad shape. This is a view from the back of the building. Again, you can see that same porch on the left side. And to the right, you can see a garage structure that was built in the 1930s. That is also part of the project, and we'll be getting into that a little bit more later. Here's a interior view of a couple of the existing bedrooms. You'll notice that they are quite small. One has a closet, one does not. And these are just very small units of housing in this building. They don't have their own kitchens or bathrooms. It's congregate living. This is a view on the left of the attic space. You'll note the knob and tube wiring. On the right is a photo of the kitchen facilities. It's a very old looking kitchen, and this was to serve one stove, one sink, one fridge, and there are upwards of 20 people living in this house at one time. Here's some representative photos of the bathrooms in the building. They're not in great shape and need to be completely renovated. So rehabbing this property is quite complicated. There are a number of preservation restrictions on the property. There's an agricultural preservation restriction on 54 acres of the land. It was put on by the city in 1983. The buildings are excluded from this restriction. It preserves the farm fields from development, and it stipulates that they must remain in agricultural use. The historic preservation restriction was added by the city in 1998. It is a perpetual restriction. It is on the existing house and garage. It stipulates that it cannot be demolished, and any changes need to go through the Mass Historical Commission. The fields are contributing elements. This building and property is also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. In 2000, there was an affordable housing restriction on the property. It expires in around 2031, and it provides that 23 units of single room occupancy, rental, and emergency housing for low to moderate income people and those who require emergency shelter. There's been a lot of work on the building over the last 130 years. You'll note that the annual operating budget in 1954 for the farm and lodging house was about $20,000, or in today's dollars, it's about $250,000 in 2023 was the annual appropriation. In 1998, we got a grant with the state to redo the roof and with historically appropriate slate shingles. And 99, we got another grant from the state to restore part of the building envelope and improve the weatherization. This photo shows the slate roof restoration from 1999, 98. And this is a photo of the building after the work was completed. In 2019, we commissioned a study, a capital needs assessment on 75 Oliver Street to determine the extent of the work needed to repair the building and bring it into code compliance. It identified a large number of issues in fair and poor condition. The total cost in 2020 was estimated at $1.5 million for these basic renovations. It did not include designer fees, historic restoration, and other soft costs. We're estimating that that'd be about $2.5 million today, just for, again, the basic restoration work. It would not include work on the garage, and it did not, like I said, it did not include the designer fees. And so that would be considerably more expensive to just bring the building up to code. In 2021, Valley received $58,000 from the Community Preservation Act for due diligence tasks necessary for the creation of affordable rental housing in Easthampton. Jessica Allen, who's the project manager, will tell you a bit about the process and why the town lodging house was selected. But it's important to note that Valley looked at 35 sites throughout the city, made offers on at least 5 that were not accepted before landing on the town lodging house. The lodging house was vacated by the Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council in 2022. And that's why, partly why this project rose to the top of the list. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica for a few minutes, and then I will continue. You're muted still.
I'm going to ask Alexis to join and give a quick presentation about Valley and who we are and what we do.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexis Brainaker, and I'm the Executive Director of Valley Community Development. We are a nonprofit that serves Hampshire County primarily. We've been around for 36 years, and one of the 3 things that we do is build affordable housing. The other 2 things that we do are work with small businesses, and we also work with first-time home buyers. Valley currently owns 109 units of affordable rental housing in Hampshire County, primarily in Northampton and Amherst. We did do a development in Easthampton with Wayfinders back in the early 2010s, late 2000s, Parsons Place. Valley is a minority owner in that development. It's primarily owned by Wayfinders now. Of our existing rental properties, Valley tends to serve folks that are really low income. So that, for folks who know, is people at or below 30% of the area median income. That's often people living on Social Security or people with another disability, people coming out of homelessness. We have a mixture of units that serve individuals and couples, and as well as units that serve families. And the family units in particular often go up to 60% of the area median income. So we do have working families, folks who are working minimum to low wage jobs, living in our rental apartments. We have a property management company that we use who manages all of our properties. And we have a resident services coordinator who works with our tenants to make sure that they're getting the services that they need. They will do things like help coordinate bus passes and help folks get to medical appointments, secure access to case management, that type of thing. So we have a relatively robust group of folks who work on our properties. Like I said, we've been around for 36 years. We've developed housing for almost that amount of time. And a lot of the current apartments that we own, we've had for several decades. So we know both how to serve the community that is looking for affordable rental housing, and it is a primary tenet of what we do.
Thanks, Alexis. I'll get into some of the details of how we landed at town lodging site for a possible affordable housing development. So as Jamie had noted, we had conducted site feasibility on about 35 sites and deeply vetted or put offers on about 5 sites. What we were really looking for when we were doing the site analysis process was to find a property that was large enough to serve 25 to 30 apartments and site amenities. And there's a reasoning behind that, because for affordable housing developers, in order to qualify or be eligible to apply for low income housing tax credits at the state level, you need to have a project that's 20 or more apartments. So we were knowing that that is a major financing component to developing affordable housing. We want to make sure that we were looking at sites that were large enough to accommodate at least 20, more likely 30, in order to make the numbers work from a financial standpoint. We also want to make sure that we were looking at sites that had access to public utilities like water and sewer. The other important component that we also wanted to make sure that our these sites that we were looking at was access to PVTA bus. And some of you may or may not know that Town Lodging is actually on the Nashwanik Express line. So this property hit a lot of those boxes, and we became aware that the property was vacant. And this is a property that since 1890 has been providing housing to the community's most vulnerable populations. And so to lose that community asset was concerning to us. We went to the city to see if there was a way that Valley could assist and be a partner in trying to bring this property back to life. Not knowing if the city had any plans or what their vision was for this property. And so they gave us permission to do some due diligence. And so, what we like about this site is, again, bringing it back to its historic use as affordable housing. It's a real shame to see that community asset that has such a long history in our community be gone. The property is beautiful. I mean, anybody who's walked the site, you have gorgeous views all around the property. It has access to water and sewer. It's on the Nashwanik Express. It really has a story to it. And this property, I think, is just a great opportunity to bring a site that's fallen, a building that's in disrepair, a site that's vacant, and bringing it back to life to what its historic use has always been. So mostly what we've been doing since we've had these conversations with the city is doing historic due diligence. We have historic consultants and archaeological consultants that we work with. One of the things we wanted to do was get a better understanding of, would this be a property that would be eligible for historic tax credits in addition to low-income housing tax credits? And then understanding how any of the redevelopment changes, how that would be viewed by Mass Historic and what they're looking for. So what I think is really interesting about the Mass Historic piece is that, as Jamie mentioned, it has a historic preservation restriction. It's on the state and federal registers. And mostly what they're concerned about is the view from the road. So they want to make sure that the historic view, similar to that picture that Jamie had shown with the house and the barn in the back, remains what you see from the road. So they're more interested in exterior modifications than they are necessarily with interior modifications. So we would be able to move walls around, change the size of the apartments, keeping the common areas sort of as intact as we possibly could. But there's more concern from Mass Historic's perspective on what the building looks from the exterior. So I think that's important to note. So what we've been discussing as a possible redevelopment opportunity here is that looking at it as affordable housing, looking to see how we might be able to have 20 or more apartments so that we would be eligible to be able to apply for low-income housing tax credits. So looking at the existing house, even though the deed restriction says 23 apartments, from current design standards at the state level, there are certain square footage requirements that we would need to hit even for an enhanced SRO, single residency occupancy room. So in order to hit those square footage requirements that the state would want us to hit, we don't think we would be able to feasibly get 20 apartments in that building. So we are looking to see how do we expand or how do we add to the property in order to boost the apartment count in order to be able to eligible for that financing. So we're looking at potentially somewhere between 12 and 15 enhanced SROs, which means that each apartment would have a private bathroom and would have a kitchenette. We have just built a project like this in Amherst at East Gables, enhanced SROs. And so we have, a recent example of we just doing this in a neighboring community. As Jamie mentioned, also the garage and the shed are historically significant, would not be able to be demolished. So is there a way to sort of convert that into community space, a property management office, place for trash, recycling containers, that kind of thing. So is that building structurally sound enough to be able to renovate into something like that in more common space areas? And then looking at a new building and how that might work with the old building. So as we've been advised by our historic consultants, MHC would be more concerned with an addition put onto the new building than they would be with a placement of a new building that looks historic. So again, going back to the historic photograph, that showed a historic barn at the rear of the property. That is the mindset that we've been moving forward with, to see, is there a way that we can create a residential building that looks like it's been there for generations, looks like a historic barn, and is placed in generally the same location as those former historic structures. So that is the mindset that we've been moving forward on, to see if there's a way that we might be able to make that happen. Who might live here? So, you know, as Alexis said, we do have, we tend to house more lower income households. So what we've been looking to do is have a mix of families and single person households. So again, single person households in the existing building, the new building being able to house families. So 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. This is something that was identified in the city's housing production plan as a priority for households. So acknowledging that in the housing production plan. It would be 100% affordable apartments to low to moderate income households. As some of the comments that I heard at the recent public hearing last week, there was concerns about parking and traffic. I think it's important to note that most of in our experience, about half of the households actually own a car. Most of them tend to use transportation, public transportation. So if there's 30 apartments, we do not anticipate 30 cars being on site. So in a recent example, going back to East Gables and Amherst, so we have 28 enhanced SROs. So we have 28 people living at that site. We have 17 parking spaces, and we have 9 households with cars. So we don't see that every apartment and every household actually owns a car. And I think it's important to note that. I also heard concerns about tenant selection at that last meeting. So again, it's important to note that we abide by federal fair housing rules when we do this, because we are accepting federal money through the low-income housing tax credit program. So we would need to hold a lottery. It would be for income eligible individuals and households. Their name is literally pulled out of a hat. You're either accepted to get an apartment, and then you're vetted more for your financials and query checks and stuff like that, or you're placed on a wait list. So we have a very robust lottery process. We've gone through this a number of times, and that's how tenants are selected. And I also want to note that Alexis had noted that we have property management and a resident services coordinator for our projects. We see this as being really important as part of Valley's mission. It's one thing to just house people and get them off the street or get them out of an unsafe housing situation. It's another to provide the support to them. So we work really closely with our property management company. They're very good with tenants. And we have also been incorporating resident services coordinators in all of our projects. And between the two folks, we've got people there full-time during the week. So I think it's important to note that maybe in the past, property management was not as robust, and there weren't as many people on site helping the folks that needed help. Valley's mission is a little bit different, and we want to make sure that people are supported and provided the services that they need in order to be successful in life. Couple more points. Benefits to the community. If this moves forward with a partnership between the city and us as the nonprofit, playing the developer role, it would bring this untaxed property, which is currently owned by the city, back onto the tax roll. So I think that's important to note. It would prevent further deterioration of a historic community asset. Building restoration is really expensive. And in order to be saved, it has to be a financially viable use. So, you know, what is the plan B for the city if this partnership doesn't happen? Is there $2.5 million that can be found to renovate the building? I would actually challenge that number. I think it's probably more than that. That was a straight dollar to dollar. Construction prices are going through the roof. They've been going through the roof since the pandemic. So I would suspect it would be very expensive for the city to take this on by themselves. And so here we are at next steps. So Valley is kind of focused on the new building piece. And as people heard at the public hearing last week, some of those funds from CPA would be used to conduct an archaeological investigation. We have already done some archaeological due diligence work. We had a visual site assessment done to see if there was any mounding that might indicate people being buried on site, see if there were any historical artifacts or foundations that were really significant that we should be considering for preservation. Nothing had indicated from this visual assessment that there were any concerns. The initial assessment also indicated that the site is far enough away from a waterway that the chances of finding Native American remains or artifacts are pretty slim. So again, something I heard that was mentioned at the public hearing that I want to just note and correct for the record. So our next steps with that new building is waiting to hear back from MHC on our proposal to get a permit in order to do the work. Once the permit is granted, then we could go ahead and move forward with some shovel test pits. This would be somebody using a shovel and a hand sifting through soil and looking for artifacts and remains. Everything would be documented and sent back to MHC, and then they would consider whether a new building would be eligible to be placed on the site. So that's the work that's happening with the new building. Jamie is presenting tonight on what the plan is for the existing building. So Jamie, that's the end of what I wanted to present for information.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jess. That was very enlightening. And I think will help to clarify for everyone. I just want to continue with the, we're a little bit further with the presentation. So the proposed project through the Community Development Block Grant Program is to do the design development through 90% construction documents. As Jessica talked about, this would be to convert the boarding room style units into small studio apartments. So that would reduce the total amount of units in the existing building, and the remaining 10% of construction documents would happen after this grant is completed. It would give us time to respond to the National Park Service and Mass Historical Commission and make changes to the construction documents before they're finalized and the work goes out to bid. And again, as Jessica had explained, the intensive archaeological dig would happen to on the proposed location for the new building to make sure there's no negative impacts to important historical resources. If that goes through smoothly and we do not find anything or Mass Historic isn't concerned about any disturbance, we would need to transfer the property to a nonprofit housing developer, and then Valley or some other developer would find sources of funding to develop the plans for the new building in accordance with that, the proposal that goes out to select that developer. Assuming that everything goes well with the archaeological dig, that was the plan we just talked about. If we find that there would be resources that would be disturbed and a new building can't be constructed, we'd be in a much different situation. We would not be able to work with a nonprofit housing developer as they would not be able to make a project that's self-sustaining. In that case, the city would be left owning the building, and we would need to restore the property by ourselves. There's no state funding for congregate living situations except for temporary housing for migrants and homeless persons. We'd need to finance the entire construction and other soft costs and pay annual appropriations to staff the building and conduct maintenance activities. It would be a very expensive proposition for the city to do that. So this is why, from the city's perspective, we would like to work with a affordable housing developer to take on the project and ultimately maintain this project as a self-sustaining model of housing. The proposed budget for this grant application, again, this is just for the existing building. We're looking at design development costs of approximately $450,000 to take the design to the 90% construction documents. There are some administrative costs to managing to doing that work, and administrative costs for the city. So the total project budget we are estimating at $564,000. Again, the grant allows up to $950,000. So we're submitting a request that is well below the maximum grant amount. Timeline for this project: the application is due in a couple of weeks. We'll begin the archaeological investigation this spring. We'll find out in the midsummer whether or not we've received the Community Development Block Grant Award. Design development would take place through the remainder of 2024 and 2025. While the design development's ongoing, we'll be conducting historic reviews and permitting with the state, and local permitting for the new building, with the earliest possible construction beginning in spring 2027. That's if everything goes smoothly. So now I'd like to open it up for questions and comments. And again, you can email me if you have questions or comments after the hearing tonight. And again, you can also email me to sign up for project updates. I'm going to leave this screen up while people provide comments, so that way you have access to my email. So again, going back to the beginning, please use the raise hand function to signal your intent to speak. I will make you a participant, and then you can turn on your camera and microphone. So, Kyan?
Hi there, everyone. My name is Kyan Jamrog McQuaid, resident of Precinct 5. I just want to thank the presenters here for giving such a thorough overview of the project, and also express my support for the project. Obviously, the need for affordable housing is very salient in Easthampton, and like this presentation made super clear, this project just makes sense. Everything comes together sort of perfectly, as this use being one of the only ones that makes sense with all these restrictions. So yeah, I'm excited to see this move down the docket. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyan. Next, I'm going to call on Ami Ross. Are you there, Ami? All right. Let's try Ellen. Okay. Ami, it looks like you are ready. You'd like to speak, turn off your microphone, and like to show your video, you're welcome to do that as well.
Okay. My name is Ellen Damaris. I live at 134 Oliver Street. I've lived here for 50-something years. I'm a lifelong resident of Easthampton. When I moved here, I had two neighbors, one of them being the Chickwin Farm. You talk about serving the community, and you mentioned that word a lot. What do you mean by the community? Do you mean that this housing would be for Easthampton residents, or is it open? Would they be U.S. citizens in this housing project? I just have to make a comment because you speak about the beautiful view the beautiful view, but nobody cared about the beautiful view when they put a dump right up the street from me. Nobody cared about all the trash littering the roads. Nobody cared that the water is running orange behind the old dump where there's tons and tons of felt buried there that'll be there forever. So I'm very skeptical about a beautiful view. You tried to put a firing range behind my house. You tried to put a dog park behind my house, and I have 5 dogs. I love dogs. But let me give you some history. During the Depression, my dad worked to make money. If you walk up Oliver Street and take a look, there's a certain place you can stand. The trees are planted in perfect rows, hundreds of pines. They wanted to tear that down to put in a dog park. I think that's a shame. And another thing I worry about is where they may have buried people on this property. These were poor people. They ran a farm. Why can't there be a farm there again? These people enjoyed doing that. They felt part of the community. And I wonder, what will we get more police? The police have used my driveway for surveillance for all the drug deals going on up the road. What's going to stop that? Because it's not being stopped now. I also am concerned about my taxes and what it's going to do to our schools. And I guess that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Ellen. I would like to just say that with regards to the community, we will be adhering to the federal fair housing rules for tenant selection. There's a possibility to have a local preference for Easthampton residents. There is a long list of Easthampton residents who are losing their housing currently due to rising rental rates. There are folks whose landlords sell their building and they are losing opportunities. They're being evicted for no fault of their own. This housing would support those families.
And what about,
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up and we need to call on someone else.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Ami, would you like to contribute?
There. Am I,
So, can you guarantee that?
can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm E. Ross, 28 Oliver. I just wrote this, so be patient. I'm 61, Russian, Jewish, Polish, French American of working class means. I own my home. I live on SSDI, and I'm grateful every day I come home to it here on Oliver Street down the road. I'm in favor of the town farm again and again and being considered and further development for an affordable housing directly in my neighborhood. I don't believe anybody here doesn't think having a home is unimportant. And it goes without saying that it's a very basic, much important human right, like clean food, water, and air. Mayor told us about, and the reminder also told us about other projects that are happening right now. 53 acres at 357 Main Street. It's going to have 87 units of affordable. 10 acres of that is the units. 43 is open space. There's also a pre-development going forward on Ferry Street with another 96 units that's coming in affordable and some at market value. There's a third development happening on Loudville, and I'm going to guess this is a private because it's got 15 residential units and it's going to be a cul-de-sac. All these projects need infrastructure. They all need light, sidewalks, utilities, fire hydrants, etc. I support them because I live here. That's where I want my taxes to go, for homes, for the community, and adjutting communities. The fourth project is the town farm. It is at best 5 to 7 years out. The council said yes to the already allocated 100,000, which is now coming in 50,000 less. Thank you. To do pre-development and projects that are using equal, those other projects are using equal and larger amounts for pre-development. Easthampton Nanotech Park has 200,000, getting it pool back in order, and I really look forward to using that as a community member. But our nation government mainly chooses to heavily support other governments like Israel and subsidize their housing and military and destroying homes and life before our very eyes. This is fine for some, but not for me. Instead of taking care of our elders, our veterans, our children, our teachers, our nurses, our failing infrastructure right here in this town, EHO is a great town and this is a great country. So yeah, I'm for spending money that we have here, taking care of those that are here in this city and country, not Americans, but people who are here in America. Because everybody is from somewhere except for the First Nations. We are all immigrants. We all pay to live on this planet because it's a capitalist system. And to end, I want to also agree and thank publicly Connie and Omar last week when they responded to a community member saying, poor people are bad. When opposing the town farm for future affordable housing, I believe denying people human rights is the original bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ami. Next, we're gonna hear from Avery LaValle. Avery, you there? Let's go to Jackie.
Hi, thanks so much for letting me speak. And thanks to Jamie and to the folks from Valley Community Development for presenting this plan. You know, town lodging is a historic building, which we've learned about. And not only is it a historic building, but it's always been used as affordable housing. So it makes sense to me to keep it as affordable housing. As noted, it has an agricultural, a historic, and an affordable restriction on the property. The rebuilding of town lodging and turning it into studio apartments rather than single room occupancy, to me, just feels like a much kinder way of serving folks who need safe, fair, and affordable housing. I also want to just mention, you know, as Alexis noted, Valley Community Development has 36 years of history building and maintaining affordable housing. They absolutely know what they're doing. They have an incredible reputation in the Valley. They do really, really good work. I really strongly support this project through block grant proposal. And I think that's all I need to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm going to turn to Chris.
Hi, everybody. I have a question. I wasn't at the meeting last week. You talked about, what was it, like 12 to 15 apartments in the old building. And I'm curious as to what the exact amount approximately you're looking at in the new building.
I'm going to let Jessica answer that question.
Sure, I'm happy to answer. So what we've been looking at is probably somewhere around 18 units, 15 to 18 units. Again, it's really going to sort of depend on the footprint and how much we're going to be limited based on the archaeological work that's going to be done. But really, we're looking to sort of hit 30 units total between the two buildings. So there's a lot up in the air in terms of number of apartments in either building. It really will sort of end up being what is feasible in the existing building.
Okay, thank you. I guess my comment on it would be that, you know, I live right here. I'm on Carillon Circle. We walk there pretty much every day. I loved the town farm. I thought that was a fantastic concept. where the members of the House had to sort of give back to the community in order to stay there. And it was a really nice way of keeping the agricultural motif of the property intact. Looking at the architectural plans, I'm not really seeing how that is going to continue in the first one. And I do worry about the impact on the farmland with a larger number of people behind it, whether they're using it or abusing it. Those are just some of my concerns. I'm pretty early on in the process. But I'd like to thank you guys for a very thoughtful presentation.
Sure. I can respond to maybe one question you had in terms of the farmland piece. So just to clarify, we're really looking only at the existing building and around 2.5 acres around that building. So it's the shed, the driveway, and at the back of the property drops pretty quickly. And so that's kind of like the boundary line between the historic piece and the fields. So the fields are going to remain untouched. They're going to continue to be preserved and owned by the city. So whatever agreements the city has with local farmers for farming that land would continue. This project would not be touching that back acres. It's like, 53 acres are going to remain as they are. So this proposal really is just for areas that were previously developed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to go to Avery next.
Hi, Avery LaValle, 90 Oliver Street. I'm here, looking at the lodging house from my bay window, as I do every day. Okay, I want to point out a lot of things. I wish I had 30 minutes. It's a rhetorical question. How many sidewalks are there on Oliver Street? Answer, 0. You talk about the farm being not impacted. When you put 50, 70, 120, depends on whether people have family members or friends, as you put it, in a place right there in 2.5 acres, that field's going to get trampled. Bill's not going to be able to bale his field because people are going to be all over it. They're going to be littering in it. They're going to be destroying it. It's going to happen. You talk about the infrastructure. The pipes at this end of Oliver Street are over 100 years old and getting older every day. Let's talk about a few other things. I've called Valley years ago asking how I could help to maintain the property. You guys ignored me, so shame on you for that. Now, beyond that, this property has been going to hell. The town talks about wanting to do something. Where were you guys from the year 2000 until now for the last 25 years, not doing anything for the property? I have literally called asking if I can mow the grass for free, pick up the sticks, trim the limbs, pull out the roots around the edges of the property for free. You guys ignore me. And then you talk about it's $2.5 million. In a pig's eye, it's $2.5 million to fix that place up. For the $500,000 you guys are getting ready to spend, you could fix it up. It could look nice. I think you should spend that money making it look nice. I don't think you should try to slap more buildings in what may or may not look like original townhouses. And then once you get the okay to do it, slap whatever the hell you want in there. I don't agree with that. Ami pointed out very nicely that this area has in town many areas where there's already being sites developed. But in these sites, I'm showing you out the front door now, there's 3 deer grazing in the field across the street from that property. Do you think when there's 75 people, 25 feet over there, throwing their garbage and running around in that area, that those deer are going to come here anymore? No, they're not. They're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to enjoy it anymore. Now, like I said, you could fix up the property like you haven't for the last 25 years, and you could depend on the community like myself, who's been here the whole time. But are you going to do it? No, you're going to err to the side of profit and tax collection and try to thump in more profit, more buildings, more money, because everybody wants to get paid. Instead of getting paid, why don't we clean up our mess, make it nice, and make those deer over there that I'll show you one last time if I can. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't show you. They're getting too far away now. Give them a little bit more time to enjoy the field, and the chickens more time to bale it for their grass-fed beef for local burger, and let all the other 5 subdevelopment low-income properties that are already going in town enjoy it. and let this be a museum, a farm, a place that can be fixed up and cleaned up and enjoyed. Yes, it might cost a little bit of money and work, but that's what we're about here. We're a community. We like to put in our work.
Thank you, Avery.
Can I just respond to one comment that Mr. LaValle had in terms of Valley's responsibility for this property? I want to be clear that Valley has never owned this property. We were not the entity that was the city leased to. The city's lease agreement was with SMOC, Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council, who owns numerous other sites in Easthampton. So I just want to be clear that if you called Valley and you didn't get a response, I'm very sorry about that, but we are not the property owner and we have not been the property owner. This is a city-owned property that has been in city hands since 1890. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I was about to make that point as well. I'd also point out that when Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council owned the property, they were responsible for all of the maintenance and upkeep of the property at the time. And it's only beginning in April of 2022 that the property reverted back to the city maintenance. And we are now trying to find our way out of this difficult situation that we are in. Next, I'm going to ask Brian to participate.
Hi, I'm actually sitting here with Brian. I'm Trisha Dandry, my husband Brian. We live at 29 Lawler Drive. And so one of the questions I had that you partially answered was to try to better understand when the city decided to have another company manage it. What was the timeline, the plan for what was going to happen with this property that then somehow went amok? That's one of my questions. My other question is to ask a little bit about if the project were to go ahead, what is the volume of people, maximum capacity that you would have for 12 people you said their studio, so that's 12, but potentially there could be 2 people in a studio. What is the number of people that potentially would be living on the property? My last point to make is that I know you've mentioned that it is a public bus route. Well, it is a public bus route when individuals request the bus to arrive. It is not part of a standard public bus route that I'm aware of for Pioneer Valley. The other thing just to mention, there is water that does run behind the property. It's a creek, but we go cross-country skiing on the public land and very much love that aspect of it. So from my personal point of view, I'm not opposed to helping to support affordable housing. I've gone into this house when we used to bring things at Christmas time as part of what our family would do. And the individuals that lived in the house obviously had a lot of need. And I am very much a proponent of trying to help support safe, affordable housing for those that are in low and moderate income. But I do want to recognize that at this point, I kind of want to better understand the framework of what didn't go well, so that we can understand why we're making sort of a very large, impressive, thank you very much for your presentations, about making a change to this property. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will just quickly address the question about the sort of what happened in the past. So as you saw in the presentation, the city owned the property beginning in 1890. It was for 110 years, 115 years. It was a part of the annual appropriation of the city. City taxpayer dollars went every year to support the operations at the lodging house and whatever previous names that it was called over the years. Those appropriations paid for a caretaker to live on the property and supported the farming operations. Beginning in 2005, the city decided that it was not worth annual appropriation, and we contracted with the Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council. All of those people who were involved in those decision-making process have long since left work for the city. So we don't know what exactly led them to that those decisions. But the lease agreement with Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council stipulated that they would provide for and take care of the property, take care of the residents, and generally do their best to maintain the property. After about 17 years of them managing the property, it turns out that that did not happen. The property was not kept up in good repair, and through a number of residents' complaints to the public health department about the quality and conditions of the building that had happened over the years, rather than addressing those issues, SMOC decided to terminate the lease and move their clients to other facilities, either in Easthampton or in the region. We are looking to partner with Valley Community Development Corporation because the city is not in a situation where we want to take on $200,000 a year to maintain the operations of this building. The city is not very good at running affordable housing. We have the opportunity to work with a nonprofit affordable housing developer who has a business model that can make a sustainable operation of housing that will be able to provide for the upkeep and maintenance and repair of those buildings, while being able to support the residents that live there. So it's our belief that this is a better way to handle the development, is to not let the city maintain it, and to have someone else in charge. Jessica, is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think what it's important to understand is affordable housing developers, the operations of the building are high, and the tenant rents are low. And so we're really always sort of trying to hit that margin to make sure that you have enough money to maintain the property, and we've done a good job of that here at Valley. I think with SMOC, because of some of the rent restrictions that were in the deed restriction, it was really hard for them to probably have enough money for operations in order to properly maintain and continue to do capital improvements to the building. So it's a business model, and I think that, I can't speak for SMOC. I don't work there. I don't know really what happened, but if I had to guess, that would be my guess.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. And thank you. It's not Brian, but thank you for your comments. All right, next, I'm going to ask Liz Plouffe. She's the city's community social worker, to provide a comment.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you to Valley CDC as well. So I am the community social worker for Easthampton. I work for the public health department located at 50 Payson Ave. And I just wanted to kind of chime in from a social services, social work perspective, that we, as many people probably know, we have an unprecedented housing crisis in our state right now. And the guidance from the governor's office has been that this really is requiring a response from cities and towns to participate and help their residents. So every week, every 2 weeks, every month, a number of housing groups get together, virtually, in person, talk about what's going on in our cities, towns, what people are doing, what we can do, what we need to do. And so I attend as many as I can on behalf of Easthampton, because right now housing and homelessness is the #1 request coming through my office from Easthampton residents, both individuals and families. So there's a monthly municipality meeting that happens with the governor's team. It actually just happened last week. And so for those who are not aware, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which was formerly DHCD, We have had an emergency shelter system in Massachusetts for many years where you used to be able to call and receive help if you were a family, a pregnant person, a couple, whatever the case may be. It was the shelter line for families in need. And for the first time in 40 years, the shelter system was capped and closed because the demand for our state is so high right now. So they capped it at 7,500 families and started a wait list. And so as of last week, there were 7,522 families in the shelter system for our state. There are 772 on the wait list. And I think it's important to note, because I know this has come up from residents, less than half of the families on the emergency shelter system are migrant families. So these are Massachusetts residents and families that have a need for housing, just as much as our migrant families do. And so I just, I don't feel like I need to make that point, but it seems to be something that people would want to know. And so we have Easthampton families on that wait list. We have Easthampton residents right now who are in shelter placement, in long-term placements at motels and hotels. We have people who live in their cars. We have landlords that are selling properties. We have rents that are going up. We have people who cannot afford to stay where they are, and they want to because they work here, their kids go to school here. It's truly, Easthampton is where they call home, and low income and affordable housing options are necessary right now, and they're going to continue to be moving forward. So as someone who is working with our residents day in and day out and trying to help people stay in a safe, affordable place in our community, this project for me is a no-brainer. So I just wanted to put some numbers on what we're seeing, because I think it's important for people to know that this is a very real issue in Easthampton and across the state, and it's not going to get any better if we don't continue to provide options for people. So that's all. I just wanted to provide some info from what we're seeing at City Hall. So thank you. And thank you again to Jamie and Valley. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you so much for speaking up, Liz. Next, I'm going to call on J.N. Hicks. Right, let's try Mary Lou.
Hey, this is J.N. Hicks. I'm sorry, I kind of couldn't get it to unmute. Can I still talk?
Yep, go ahead. Mary, we'll follow your comment with Mary Lou.
So I just live here on Deerfield Drive. I'm very close. I walk down in there towards that field very frequently. I'm all for helping low-income people. I think that's an excellent thing. I definitely have concerns that, this has kind of been presented as like the historic use of this building. I feel like that might not be really the spirit of what this is. It seems like it's in the strict form of the words, it's like low-income housing, but this seems like in spirit a very different thing than what's ever been there. Although I have not been there for, I have only been here for 12, 13 years now. It hasn't been for 50 or anything like that. It seems like very different than the spirit of this community right here. And I think that the fact that there's so many low-income people to house doesn't necessarily mean that building large projects is the way to solve that problem. And although my heart goes out to them, I can't help but be worried about putting this in here. It's just, I'm not in favor of it. I think there's got to be a different solution to this problem. But those are my 2 cents. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you. Mary Lou, would you like to speak? If you're trying to talk, you'll need to unmute your microphone. Let's try Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie and I live in Precinct 1. I appreciate your presentation. I thought it was very thorough. I just had some questions and I would appreciate if you could answer them for me. So when you guys decided to develop in this area, what impact did you consider of the neighborhood? That's the first question. Okay. Secondly, as you're aware, we are already building 4 other affordable housing units. So approximately we're going to end about, I'm going to say about 400, don't quote me on that. Somebody may be able to correct me, of affordable units coming in within the next 5 years, let's say. Okay. We all know that that's going to take a lot of resources. You must have had an implementation plan for how you're going to meet the needs for these resources. When I say resources, I'm talking about school. I'm talking about first responders. I'm talking about all of the government resources that taxpayers, homeowners contribute to. Which leads me to my other question is, will the grants and your funding meet all those needs to increase the resources, or is that going to come out of homeowners' money? Because as a I'm talking low middle income person who owns a house, okay, working 2 jobs, trying to keep up with my taxes as it is, we're struggling. So what impact will that have on us? That's another question I would like you to please answer. So at this time, those are what, and can you guarantee that my taxes will not go up in support of this? So if you could answer those questions that I clearly put out, sort of clearly, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I don't know how to answer the majority of your questions. I can't speak to taxes.
Well, these have to be things that you have thought about. I mean, you can't just like put a bunch of people and say, how are we going to go ahead and support them? These have to be. I'm not going
to engage in a back and forth with you. If you would like to hear a response, I can respond.
Well, I expect a response to these answers, to these questions.
Sorry, Jessica, would you like to?
Want me to go ahead, Jamie? I'm happy to try to answer Julie's questions. So in terms of impact to the neighborhood, so because this has been early in the process, typically Valley has a very good reputation of having neighborhood and abutter meetings. So if this moves forward, we would have meetings with the neighbors as a group. We can meet with individuals, households to talk about concerns, how a development might be able to mitigate some of those concerns. So we're very much of an open dialogue. This is a historic use in this neighborhood. So we're not introducing affordable housing in a neighborhood that's never had affordable housing. This has been this use for generations. And so I think in terms of the impact, it's not new construction. It's not a new affordable housing. It has been affordable housing for a while.
It is recent. Yes, it is new.
So I would just say that if this project moves forward in the way that Valley is hoping to, we would be more than happy to have neighborhood meetings and meet with households individually to hear any concerns you have and be able to have a good one-on-one conversation about that. So I just want to, this is not your only forum to converse with Valley. We're very open and transparent about how we conduct our business. And so, we would look forward to having a dialogue with neighbors and abutters. So there's that. In terms of impacts to school, first responders, I mean, those are considerations of the city. They have an affordable housing production plan that is, Jamie can tell me what year it was last done, but it indicates the number of new housing units that the city needs to meet in order to meet the state requirement of having at least 10% of all housing units be deed restricted as affordable. Last I checked, the city was at around 7.4%, somewhere around there. So there's still a while to go in order for the city to hit its 10% number. So you'd have to go and look at the housing production plan. I'm sure folks from city planning would be happy to direct you to where it is on the website. And it kind of outlines the city's strategy for moving forward with affordable housing projects. So, and then just to touch on the taxes piece, this property right now is not being taxed at all. It's owned by the municipality. So if anything, it's going to bring in tax revenue to the city that has not been generated for the past over 100 years. So that's the response to those questions, and then we can move on to the next person.
Thank you. Thank you both. Next, Mary Lou.
Okay, I think I got this working.
We can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Jamie and Jessica, thank you for the presentation. I just want to, there's a couple things I want to address. I think there's a misconception that I've gotten, I feel from some of the people speaking, is that those people who are on subsidized housing are lazy, that they can't contribute to this society. I just feel like there's a real negative connotation of people who are on some sort of assistance, and that's not the case. I have personal experience of that. They're trying the best they can with what they are dealing with, and as the social worker from the city said, we've got families that don't have homes, that are in danger of losing their homes, and chances are their parents are working, they're doing the best they can. Life is really hard, life is really expensive. And I think we as a city, as a community, we have to look at this as our tribe, and we need to support them. And I'm glad we're doing that. And Jess, I'm glad you said that we're required by the state to have 10%, and we are just now moving that forward with all the other affordable housing projects. The numbers continue to go up for affordable as we keep putting in these other expensive developments. So, you add market rate housing in, and we're going to have to balance that with affordable housing. So I'm glad the city is taking an effort, is making a really great effort. There's some great projects out there. And I just want to say that people who are on subsidized, with subsidized housing, they're still people, and they still can contribute to society. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Trish, would you like to speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Trish Heed. I'm here with my husband, Neil, and we are residents at 3 Carillon Circle. We live less than a quarter mile from this proposed development. And I'd just like to make a few comments and sort of talk about some of the things that some other people have mentioned. It basically seems to me, from everything I've heard, that this basically is a project that's due to the city's lack of oversight for over the last 17 years of a property that's been left to fall into really great disrepair. But I don't think that the answer to that is to put affordable housing that packs in as much housing into every square inch as possible is the answer to fixing that. Maybe that's the only way that you can get this grant, and maybe that'd be a question you could answer. I have absolutely no problem. This has been, there are deed restrictions, several of which that I don't think anyone actually touched on how you plan to get around the deed restrictions that seem to sort of stand in the way of a lot of what you're proposing. But I have no problem with it, with its use being as it stood, and you taking that house and you converting it to the amount of units that that house could sustain, but then saying that you're going to pack another building behind it, and you can't tell us now how many units that's going to be. It's going to depend on how many bodies you dig up or don't dig up when you go on your archaeological whatever you called it. There's places for this, Ferry Street, Main Street, places that have the infrastructure for this. This is not that place. We cannot accommodate, I understand that you said that there was no traffic study or anything done because you hoped that half of these people wouldn't have transportation. You can't hope that half these people won't have transportation. So as a resident, I would like to know how this traffic is going to impact my being able to get in and out of the neighborhood, which is already a little dicey getting out from Oliver Street onto West Street as it is. So I would like to understand all that. And you're overlooking that, saying that, a lot of these people may not have transportation, and yet saying that this is on a bus route, which is not true. I mean, let's be honest. It's on the Nashwanik Express, like was mentioned, is a call for service van. And if you're saying that's going to be able to support half of the people that live there, I think that you're mistaken. So unless you're also telling me if funded in this is going to be sidewalks from the town community or from the town farm all the way out to West Street, this is going to be nothing but an extremely dangerous situation that exists currently, where people walk down that road with no sidewalks, where there's curves in the road where you can't see these people. You come around blind curves, especially at night where there is no street lights on that street. It's an extremely dark area. So I don't believe that this is the place. I'm thrilled that we have 4 project and development for affordable housing, because as everyone has said, it's a national crisis. It's not just a crisis in Easthampton, and it's something that we owe to all of our citizens of Easthampton. And I'm for that 100%, but I'm not for forcing that into something where it doesn't belong.
We're gonna continue with the next comment. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Jessica, is there anything that you wanted to respond?
Sure. I mean, I can say that in terms of traffic studies and all of that stuff, that's way down the road. If we actually move forward with this project, that's information that would be presented during the permitting process. We are not there yet. We are very preliminary and schematic in the design. And so all of these questions that you have in regards to traffic and sidewalks and pedestrian safety, that would all get addressed during the public hearing process. That's not what this public hearing is about for right now. There'll be other public hearings in the future that would address those.
Yeah, that would address it in the future when we have no say, after we have absolutely no say.
Thank you. We're going to move to the next comment. Thank you. Jenna?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jana Tatro. I'm the chair of the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership here in the city of Easthampton. I live at 52 Pomeroy Street. I am very excited about the possibility of the town lodging house being redeveloped. This has been a priority of the Housing Partnership for many years. We worked with the planning department back in 2019 to do the capital needs assessment. Town lodging, as many folks have said, has been serving some of our most vulnerable residents for decades in Easthampton. And this feels like the only viable way forward. The city of Easthampton is not in the business of being an affordable housing developer or an affordable housing provider. So in order for this historic property to remain viable for the city and for vulnerable residents, we really need an affordable housing partner and developer to move the project forward. The Housing Partnership voted at our last meeting to write a letter of support for the CDBG application, and we are very much looking forward to the project going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. I'm going to skip Avery. You've already spoken. Next, Gail.
Yes, hi, this is Gail. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, I'm Gail Flood, and I am one of the owners of Echodale Farm, which is on Park Hill Road. So we are on the corner of Oliver Street and Park Hill Road. So I just have a couple of questions for today, okay? And Jamie and Jessica, I certainly appreciate the thorough presentation. Assuming that this project moves forward, will there be management on site?
Yes, Jessica can speak to that. She did speak about that in the presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did Did it start earlier than
She'd be happy to speak about that again.
Okay, sure.
Yes, so our project, East Gables is the project that we just recently completed in Amherst. And we have property management and a resident services coordinator combined have full-time Monday through Friday. So we think it's important to make sure that there are people on site, not only for proper management purposes, if a light goes out, somebody's having a problem with their sink, that sort of thing, but to provide support to the residents who are there. And the resident services coordinator are social workers, essentially, that work with the tenants to help them get the sources that they need. Those typically are most utilized by our lowest and most vulnerable tenants, but that is part of our mission and part of what we do. We don't just build housing and walk away and hope for the best. We really are dedicated and involved in making sure that our tenants have the best put forward for the future.
Okay, great. Thank you. And could I ask one more question today? And again, I may have missed part of this.
Please.
If not now, later, would we get exposure to the financial piece, meaning, the pre-construction costs, the soft costs, the general conditions, and then the overall, what the budget would be?
Yeah, so we are at the point right now, we are at design development. We're applying for funds for design development. We have a very rough estimate on what those construction costs would be, but the design development process will work to make those numbers a lot more clear. They will be, part of that will be Valley Community Development's, that's their property as they do their part of the project. I don't know if that's publicly available, but as far as the city's what the city is getting in for the grant, that those numbers will be available for redevelopment of the existing building. And again, those numbers are quite a ways off because we are still at that preliminary point in time.
Okay, sure. If I haven't used up my 3 minutes, can I ask one more thing? Would that be all right?
You got 1 more minute.
Okay, I'll go fast. So I understand about the actual existing townhouse now. Is there a maximum of how many? And I understand you have to do the study for families of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I understand all that. Is there a maximum number you think of additional units that would be built in the new building?
It probably wouldn't be more than 18 is my guess, but again, we're so preliminary and schematic at this point. It's really going to sort of depend on the results of the archaeological investigation on what areas we would be able to disturb and still keep the building small enough that it tucks behind the building and looks like a historic structure. So there's a lot of, Mass Historic has a lot of weight in terms of what this would look like and what it would be. So until we kind of move ahead a little bit more, we really don't have that kind of information.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and answering all of my questions. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Carol Broder. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few questions. The Valley Community Development proposal said for the grant that they got was for 12 to 15 unit studio apartments in that front unit. And then it was with 18 to 20, 1 to 3 bedroom apartments in the renewed building. You're talking about buildings behind there as well. And you're all talking about units and 2 and 3 bedroom. You're not talking about how many people are actually going to be in this whole thing. We're not naive enough to think that something doesn't have to be done with that front building. But again, you can put those studio apartments in that front building. If they're going to have their own bathrooms and their own kitchens, then you can use the space now that you have as a community room and as a kitchen space to open that up and keep that. And you're talking, about you being open and transparent. You're not. What is the square footage? And I know that it's that can be looked up. I looked it up earlier and I forgot though. Square footage for the SROs, for the single room occupancy, because the square footage of that building, you can fit in those 12 to 15 unit studio apartments. As far as you saying, these people that may live there are going to not all have cars. So you're not going to have parking spaces for all of them. Well, they don't have cars and the buses aren't going to run 24 hours a day. How are they going to get to work? And where are the jobs? You're trying to build things ahead of things before there's even jobs in place to put people, hoping that people are going to work. Our own homes here, I live on Oliver Street, I'm sorry, Carol Roeder, 72 Oliver Street. We consider our homes affordable housing because we have to work hard to afford them. So these fields and everything across the street, you're talking about, oh, well, what's going to be seen up front and tucks behind. It's such a BS, the words you're using. We're going to tuck these buildings behind here so you only see what looks like an architecture building. We're not opposed to affordable housing. We need affordable housing. We can't afford to live in our own homes without working our butts off. So and all these other units are going on. Leave this space for recreation. We walk there, the animals there. I was with Avery about the animals. I see the foxes, the deer, the bear, everything over here and stuff. They're not going to be there when people are walking around with all the parking and the lights. I guess you just aren't honest with everything. Tell us exactly how many units you're talking about, how many people, not units, but bedrooms and people that go into them. And where are the people coming from and where are the jobs to support them?
Thank you, Carol. I'm not really sure. I didn't fully follow. Jessica,
yeah, of course.
Can you continue?
So I think the one question that I heard multiple times was the number of people. So I would say that the state has a policy that they want to make sure that people, it's not underhoused. So we don't have like a 2-person household in a 3-bedroom apartment. So I would say that it's going to be at least 1 person for each bedroom is typically, I would, if you wanted to run some numbers. Again, until we know where the building can even be placed, we can't even really determine how many bedrooms are going to be in a new building. So I'm sorry if you feel like we're trying to sort of, pull the wool over your eyes, but the fact of the matter is this is very early in the process and we haven't worked out all the details because we're waiting on Mass Historic to kind of give us the green light to move ahead. So as details and as information come forward, again, we have a very robust community engagement process here at Valley, and we would be more than happy to share information as information is gathered and as it's completed. We don't like to spring anything on anybody, so that is our process, but we don't have the details right now, so I can't really share with you how many people could potentially be there because it's so early in the process.
Thank you, Jess. We're going to turn to Jessica LaValle.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I am Jessica. I'm from 90 Oliver Street. I specifically have some questions for Jessica. In terms of this development project, has this ever been done for your company for a historical property? And in terms of that, what is where did you get the information on in terms of the historical commission wanting only the exterior property to be preserved?
Yeah, good questions. So Valley itself has not done a property that's been a historic renovation. However, in my previous employment with an affordable housing consultant, I did work on a job in Westfield with Domus, who's another nonprofit that was for the Mosley School. And so I personally have had some experience with doing a historic preservation / affordable housing project with a nonprofit in Westfield. You had a second question. I didn't write it down. I'm sorry.
Well, also, I have another question. In terms of your lottery, as you say, would these be, would priority be given to residents of Easthampton and their families?
It depends on whether Easthampton, the city of Easthampton, decides under the permitting process to condition that a certain percentage of the apartments are reserved for those that are Easthampton residents. So that would be up to the city to make that condition. That being said, we do robust marketing when we do have apartments available. We do a lot of outreach to not just the community that we're building in, but the region at large, because this is a valuable resource to a lot of folks. So we have what's called an affirmative fair housing marketing plan that we are required to do, that's vetted and approved by the state. And it not only sets the standard for how the lottery would be held, but it also sets the standard on how the marketing is done. So it meets all the fair housing preferences and priorities.
Okay, thank you. And then for the town itself, why does the property need to be sold and no longer belong to the inhabitants of Easthampton, when especially I believe that this is the only property on the state historical list in Easthampton for Easthampton?
So it's not actually the only property on the state register. We have a number of properties that are the old town hall, the post office. There's a number of buildings that are on the register. But the reason why we are looking to transfer ownership to Valley CDC is because the city is frankly not good at owning and maintaining affordable housing. We've tried it in the past and we have not been able to do it long term. It's entirely dependent on the political administration, which is the voters who vote. So you get a new mayor or city council elected, and they decide that this isn't a priority for them, and funding's removed. Or we have a mayor or city council that's elected, and it becomes a huge priority, and we spend a lot of money to do capital improvements. We get grants, but then we're not able to continue that investment long term. It is a we prefer to partner with a nonprofit housing developer that this is all they do, is to manage affordable housing, to work with the clients to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need, and are responsive to neighbors because they own the property. When we've done this in the past, we're leasing it to a company or organization to maintain the buildings. They're just, they're like a renter, just like any other renter who's not necessarily going to be responsive. Alexis, would you like to say something?
Hey, Jamie, I just want to make an amendment to an earlier statement. So Valley actually has done a historic development. We did it jointly with Wayfinders, and it's on Bridge Road in Northampton, called Sargent House. So I just want to note that for the record.
And I'll also just add that as part of this process, Valley and the city have been working with a number of historical consultants to make sure that we are going through this process in a manner that has the best chance of success with Mass Historic. But at the end of the day, Mass Historic Commission and the National Park Services are the ones that get to approve or deny or make changes to what we're proposing. And we're just trying our best to have a package for them that they will approve, and not something that they're going to deny.
Also, one last question. In terms of the writing to the Historical Commission, why can this not be done before spending any town funds in something that might not actually happen?
So we did actually try that We did try to work with Mass Historic before we had any plans developed. They responded to us, you need to develop plans. We won't look or talk with you about any projects until you have a proposal that we can review. So we were in a catch-22 with Mass Historic. We need to develop some plans to a preliminary conceptual state so they can review it to say, okay, yeah, this is going to be located in the back of the building, and where they can look at an elevation and say whether or not it's visible, see whether or not it's visible to the street before they respond as to whether or not they're going to even allow us to do an archaeological investigation or a large archaeological dig. They are very much the determining what the next steps are and how quickly we can proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to call on David Blow. You're going to need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hello?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm Linda Burnett and David Blow here, and we're on 49 Oliver Street, right in the corner of Oliver Street and Park Hill. And I just have a few questions. First of all, thank you for your presentation, which was very thorough. And also, I am for affordable housing, just where it really belongs. And I don't think it belongs here on Oliver Street. I already see a traffic problem here where people, instead of going through the center of town, they cut through West Street, Oliver Street, and up Park Hill all the time. Plus, they cut over to get to Route 66. And I was actually amazed at how much traffic and how fast they go. So, again, I kind of agree with Trish and Julie about the traffic situation. I also wonder, about taxes and the resources to support all this new housing and the people, because our taxes will go up, for schools, police, transportation, all to support this and all these new people. And the sidewalks that would have to be put in, because it would be extremely dangerous for people walking down the street now, and to have more people walking the street when it is dark. There needs to be more lighting. There would need to be sidewalks and probably speed bumps put in. And also, it seems to me that the birth rate is going down. I don't know where all these people are coming from that need new, need all this housing. And, you have empty schools now too. So, and you already have like 400 units coming in, new units, and on these other projects, like the ones where Tasty Top used to be. Isn't that enough housing for these people that are on these lists? You say there's like 772 people on the waiting list. Is any of that housing spoken for these people? Also, I wonder about the dig and who's going to do the archaeological dig, and are they experienced? Are they trained? Is it going to be documented, the findings? And if this does go through, will it be fenced in? Will there be a fence around it so that people aren't in the field, the kids aren't in the field, and the farmers can use the field and the animals can use the field? And I'm wondering, that doesn't really preserve it as a historical site just to make it affordable housing. So we're not actually preserving it as a historical site. And I was wondering, if you do want to preserve it as a historical site, I don't know if any of you ever been to the Porter Phelps house in Hadley, where it is restored and it's on farmland, and it's not housing, but it's like, yeah, it's for meetings. They have meetings, they have concerts there, talks. It could be, yeah. Hello?
I can speak to the question regarding the archaeological dig and who would be conducting it if the permit is granted from Mass Historic. So we are working with SWCA Consultants. They're out of Amherst. We are working with their archaeological consultant who has a PhD in archaeology. Any of the artifacts that would be found will be put into a report, and part of what Mass Historic is requiring is that the Easthampton Historical Society would be the storing house for these artifacts that are found at the lodging house. So they're just not going to be bagged up and thrown into a room somewhere. They are going to be donated to the Historical Society.
Thank you. Next, we're going to call on Frank and Joanne.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for allowing us to speak and be invited to this meeting. My name is Frank Furman and Joanne Furman. We've lived at 92 Oliver Street and for about 40 years. So with dismay, we've seen the state of the 75 Oliver Street lodging house just gradually go downhill. And we've walked by it all the time, and we're very concerned that it maintain its character. And I don't know if adding a new building, it would lose the character. Also, with the transfer of the 2.5 acres to Valley, would that remove the deed restrictions, or would the deed restrictions remain in place that somebody couldn't put something else up that doesn't fall into the character of historic site? Furthermore, I'm also concerned about safety, as others such as Trish and Jessica and Avery talked about. There's no sidewalks here. I've actually knew a resident that stayed at the lodging house, Freddie, and he was killed in an automobile accident on Oliver Street while commuting to or from, walking from the facility. So, I mean, you're going to have people there, maybe 9 cars. Where are the rest of the residents? How are they going to be boxed in their room all day long? They need to go somewhere. And if it's an on-call shuttle, you know they're going to be walking. I'm more afraid of the town being liable for somebody getting killed for the town putting a facility like this in such a desolate location. I think that's all I have right now, but thank you very much.
I can quick speak to the deed restrictions. Yes, they do transfer. They run with the land. They are binding on the successors of any property that they were originally bound to. So in the case of the agricultural restriction, it actually excludes the 2.5 acres that the existing building and where the old barn used to be. The historic preservation restriction would remain on the building and on the existing buildings. The character of that building, it's Mass Historic who will determine whether or not the proposed new building fits the historic the historic nature of the site, and they will be actively participating and providing comments to our architects to make sure that it does look and fit into that the site. Jessica, looks like you would like to add something.
I just want to talk about the affordable housing deed restriction. So currently the one that is on the property expires in 2031. With this project, these apartments would be preserved in perpetuity for affordable restriction or affordable housing, similar to the other deed restrictions that are on there. And the result of that is when I talked about earlier about the 10% threshold that municipalities are held to provide affordable housing in their community. As of now, these 23 units will be coming off of that inventory in 2031 because the restriction will expire. This will keep units on or apartments on the inventory, therefore helping the community reach its 10% goal.
Thank you. Ellen, would you like to participate? Let's try. Greg Rashane. Greg, let's hold on you. Ellen.
Yeah. Corky, you want to say something? Come on, hurry up.
Yes, I do.
All right, my husband wanted to say something. Hold on. I can't.
Hello. My name is Jeremiah Lucy. I live at 134 Oliver Street. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to say and this is about Oliver Street in reality, but in light of the illegal alien invasion that this country is experiencing, why all of a sudden are we having a mad flurry of residential building in Easthampton, mainly low-income housing? It just seems as though someone is putting all our lives, not just our lives on Oliver Street, but the whole town at risk for a political agenda. The hideousness of bringing illegals into town to fill up these brand new slums is horrible. We've all seen what is happening in New York City and elsewhere. If you think that kind of thing is going to stay there, think again. It's on its way to Easthampton. Our mayor already has an in with the governor, and now she wants to make sure she cements a relationship with her by sacrificing the people of Easthampton for her own political agenda. That's exactly what this is going to turn out to be. It's ruining property values, and the property owners won't be any different than the illegals. DEI has come to Easthampton. People in the suburbs aren't going to react the way they have in the cities. We're going to end up fighting with these people. This is our property and not the mayor's or the council's. The people haven't voted on any of this. Funny how these proposed building sites are conveniently situated around the city in single-family home areas. I hope that the council stops being a rubber stamp for the mayor and stands up on their own 2 feet. I hope they grow a pair, for Christ's sakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz?
I'm Greg, still here. If that's, if I could still.
Sorry, Greg.
Could I go ahead? Thanks. Greetings, neighbors. Interesting to hear all your opinions. My name's Greg, and I'm a resident and homeowner here in Easthampton. And I feel really blessed to be here. I just want to share my thoughts on this proposal here. Like I said, I feel very lucky to be here, and where I come from with that is, I believe we should, seek to create that opportunity for others, and others to live here more sustainably. Right now there's a lot of vulnerable folks who are here in town, but who are getting pushed out for sure. And specifically, kind of speaking to some of the landscape here. One, Easthampton is not a place that has grown with any significance. I took a peek this morning, and I think our estimated population is maybe 500 folks more than it was around 1990. So we're really not growing all that significantly, despite what folks may think. Specifically in regards to schools, I think I've actually seen the population level. Our estimated population right now is actually going down at the moment, and I know our school census is heading downward as well. Additional students on the whole would be a net gain financially for our schools, and that's an important thing to remember, I think, in this process. And to the process, I also want to emphasize, and remind folks that, as we've been hearing, this is a very early step in this potential development, and it's not a land use approval. This proposal would come through various more formal boards on the actual permit to build it, and folks would have the opportunity to participate well before and, in informal processes and informal processes at those hearing junctures, whether it's the planning board or zoning board of appeals, that sort of things. And then I also just want to note, just generally thinking about what we have now versus what we could. Right now, this property is a liability for our community, and what we're on the path slowly toward is turning it into an asset. And I think that's value both in the social sense, more stable and safe and sustainable places for low-income people to live, and also financially, getting a little bit of tax income, I think, would be the case if we actually ended up doing a development there. And specifically around, the location itself. I just want to note that, you know, I don't think any neighborhood in our community should be exempt of having rental apartments or, you know, affordable units or anything like that. I think we should be seeking to get them really everywhere in our community, you know, in appropriate volume. And I think that's, you know, that's an opportunity here. And I'll just note that I've been a minimum wage employee at a employer probably within a quarter mile of this location. So there's plenty of jobs commensurate to the units that are potentially on the table here. And then finally, just to the renter experience. And I'm lucky, incredibly lucky to own a home. But I'm around a lot of folks who are on the rental market. And I think it's important for folks to keep in mind, especially those of you who might not have rented an apartment in the past, 10 years, say, what renting an apartment just on the market, regular apartment is today, especially, in recent, 12, 24, 36 months. It's nothing like it was 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. You need a huge amount of cash for multiple months plus a security deposit, often a broker fee. Often you have to pay to apply for apartments and then never get access to them. The experience of being a renter creates an incredible amount of disorder in people's lives when they don't have enough income to compete in a really incredibly competitive rental market right now. And that's folks' regular experience. And that's true basically in every community in the Commonwealth right now. So that's kind of the context for this. And this is not going to solve all that problem, but it's what we can do as a community to play our part, our small part in participating in solving it and moving forward. So that I'll leave it. Thank you.
We need to move to the next one. Thank you. Liz?
I just wanted to make a quick point of clarification because I know that somebody had brought it up after some of the figures I had shared. So the shelter system right now has 7,522 families that are waiting for shelter units because the state capped their list at 7,500. So the families on a wait list is over 700 right now. So we have Easthampton families who are in this process on a, thousands of people wait list to get into placement somewhere in Massachusetts. So I just didn't want those figures to get confused. And, with that, what's important to know is that directly from the governor's office, what we got last week was that there were over 200 families that went into placement and the wait list still grew by over 100 for the month of February. So there is a need. I hear what people are saying that we have a number of affordable housing projects in place, but the need for low income and affordable housing is going to continue to be a problem for Easthampton. So I just wanted to clarify the figures that were shared so there wasn't any confusion that, there's only 700 families across the state waiting because that's not accurate. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. Sean? You're muted.
I think I'm live now.
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. So low income can go either way. Not opposed to it. Opportunity is what created the country. I have a property that I own on Lawler Drive. And I also have a front row seat to low income housing where I've had to replace catalytic converters for my wife and my daughter. And I even had ramen noodles stolen out of my car, and you can check that on Mass Live. That is a fact. As long as it's vetted, deserved, and desired, it can be done in the best interest of the town and the community. But if it's not, it can be terrible. I've lived here for 44 years and nowhere else. From Lawler Drive to right off of South Street. The family I live with and the family I chose was low income. They worked hard. They live here. They want to live here without crime, without fear, without any problems. So if nobody is going to oversee that, protect the community, that can be a problem. I don't know how to say it correctly without feeling, but I've lived here my whole life. My family chose to live here. And again, I have 2 properties, and I do have a front row seat to the good and the bad it creates. I watched a widow up the street from me that lost her husband get graffiti on her $10,000 vinyl fence based on a bad decision through housing. Don't have the proof, don't have the facts, and that'll be discredited, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter is, there is good and bad. And I also had a front row seat. My bus stop growing up was right down the street from 75 Oliver Street. We had a guy named Fritz with multiple personalities that liked to drink and talk all kinds of crazy stuff to us, and we thought it was funny. And it was. We love Fritz, but I don't know what 2024 Fritz looks like. The residents have a right to be concerned. Can 75 Oliver Street maybe be used for the elderly that have lived there in Easthampton their whole life? Maybe do elderly housing. People that are used to the community that need busing, to doctors, to anything they may need to like continue their life here in Easthampton because they started and ended here, and we know them. Just concerned. I don't know the answers. Maybe you do.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate hearing from you and your concerns. As stated many times, there will be property managers and
No, there won't.
okay, thank you. We're going to go to the next comment. Natalie?
Hi, this is Natalie Murphy. I live on Lauren Lane.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I live on Lauren Lane. I live very close to the building, and Oliver is a dangerous street. It really is. A lot of traffic. My neighbors all wear orange to go walking because it is a danger. There's no sidewalks. It's not well lit. I guess I'm just reiterating that there is no grocery store close by. There isn't a library close by. We don't have any facilities close by for people that cannot drive or don't have a car. So this does not meet your criteria at all. None of it. If you want to do something, give it to like veterans that don't have a spouse. Make it for single veterans. Veterans waiting for benefits. Make it a house for that. They deserve it. Not just some kid who doesn't want. I couldn't afford to live in a nice place. I used to live in Salem, Massachusetts, and Newburyport. I couldn't afford to live there, so I moved. I joined the service. That's what people do. They move. So this is ridiculous. Placing a bill. Do you want to say something? No. Okay. This is ridiculous. Does not meet your criteria at all. I've been to Amherst and I've seen low income housing there. It is more in town. This is not in town. I'm done.
Thank you, Natalie. I'll turn to Whitney.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is James Chicklin. I grew up on Oliver Street. My family's been there for quite a long time, almost 100 years. We own the farm at 116 Oliver Street. Over the years, we've seen lots go on with the landfill being up at the end of the road, and dealing with all that stuff. Now that things are starting to like come back around and be somewhat peaceful, to see something like this be on the roster, it's kind of concerning to me. There's not a lot of open land left, and to put something like this in the middle of that, it just going to look pretty wild looking, almost like a penitentiary or something. I don't know, but I did have a little bit of a plan, utilizing the original building. I kind of threw it around with some people, and I was thinking of possibly doing, units in the building that's there. So, revitalizing the building, but, also having, garden spaces there on those two lawns on either side of the building, for the residents to be able to grow their own vegetables and food and whatnot. It just seems like it would be more fitting for that location. Just kind of scale down the whole thing. That's all. I just didn't know if there was a different avenue you guys could take besides, maximizing everything. And has anything ever been done like that, like with a agricultural historic type property? Have they ever done housing that allow the residents to grow their own food in a situation like that? Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Jessica, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, community amenities are always a great idea and something we try to incorporate. Whether tenants would want to guard it or not, it's hard to know at this point. We have, there are lots of examples of affordable housing developments that put in raised beds and then they sit there because the tenants don't want to use them. So, kind of the approach that we like to take is to have some community amenities, talk to people on what they may want, and then hopefully those residents can kind of come together and create their own community. So it's definitely on the table as something, but I don't think we would want to build something unless we knew it was going to be utilized.
And I would just like to add that the agricultural farming, it has been tried before. That was how the idea of the town lodging house, the poor farm, the Easthampton poor farm, or that was the model of the Victorian model of how we care for our poor, is let's put them in the house and make them work on a farm for it. And that model is not sustainable. It's not practiced everywhere. It's been done. It's shut down. There are just many other better ways to care for the poor and the homeless, the folks who need housing. They have unique skills that may not be farming. You can be an out of work person who has a master's degree in whatever. Why would you be working on a farm field when you're looking for work as a teacher? This is just that method that is a Victorian method of trying to, provide for our poor. And it historically has not worked out well. Bill, if you'd like to continue, so you've raised your hand again.
Yes, I really wasn't speaking on like having people work on a farm, more so just like residents of Easthampton that would like to, have the subsidy or the subsidized housing or the low income type housing, but also, would want to grow their own vegetables and reap the benefits of that. Not necessarily, be a teacher out of work looking to work on a farm, just like have a spot where they could, grow their own food there. And I just thought it would kind of be in keeping with the tradition of a town farm, not necessarily, poor people coming to work on a farm, just, people living and growing their food. Like, people want to go to the town garden, but the thing with a town garden is, you get home from the end of your day, you're not necessarily wanting to get in your car and drive all the way up to the town gardens. Like, you could live there, and it's a lot easier just to be like, oh, I've got a few minutes, let's go check the lettuce or, whatever. I just thought it might be an avenue that could be looked at. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. We're going to turn to Avery. You can have another 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to point out, that it is really important that you listen to the fact that everybody that lives within the quarter mile of the lodging house would like to see it maintained as the lodging house. They'd like to see it fixed up. They'd like to see the town pick up the mess that it created over the course of the last 25 years. Yeah. But at the same time, James and I used to bale hay in those 54 acres around that house. As little kids, we'd hang behind the tractor and bale hay. And we talk about farm work like it's some penal chore or punishment. It taught me how to be a respectful adult. It taught me how to appreciate things. I have a beautiful garden in front of my house. People love to see my sunflowers when they drive by. Maybe they'll get hacked down or whatever now, I don't know. But the point of the matter is that work builds character and it builds people. And that homestead was for building people and not pumping money into another side building. I just don't think that that's sustainable. I think everybody around here knows that. I don't know. I don't honestly know who said that there was any sort of employment within a quarter mile of the lodging house, but there sure ain't. There's no employment around here. There most certainly is not. And really and truly, it's important to know that poor people aren't bad people. They're just people. But guess what? People make waste. They do. I already clean up trash on the sides of Oliver Street every day. Nip bottles, beer bottles, trash cans. I have Ring cameras set up on the side of my house now because I'm so sick of it. You think if you add a bunch more people, good or bad, they're still going to litter. And it's still going to happen. And it's going to be even more so. And you're right. People are going to get, Frank's right. People are going to get mowed down if you start letting a bunch of people walk around on Oliver Street at night. Forget it. I just got totaled on Oliver Street last July. Somebody just no look pulled out of Howard Ave and creamed me in my car. So it's a very dangerous avenue. And you say that this is a conversation for later, but no, it's not. It's a conversation for now. It's right now. And right now, you guys should stop bellyaching about spending this money to convert it into something with another company and fix the mess. James is a great carpenter. You know how good of a carpenter he is? He's fantastic. He's the one I call when I need carpentry done. I'm a plumber. I know a lot of people on this board and this message board who are against it that probably would throw their hat in the lot to fix it. Now, I'm going to keep saying that because you guys don't listen. You got free labor waiting for you in the care of good citizens of this city. But you're going to turn a blind eye for profit. And it seems like no matter what we say, you guys are just so happy to go ahead with it when you don't live there. But let me build a high-rise and pack a bunch of low-income people next to your home and see how you feel about it. Especially when you don't live anywhere near any sort of infrastructure. God, I could go around all day. I'm losing my place. Just shut me up now.
Thank you. Carol? Carol, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. I got a little upset earlier, but I'm going to go back to, and people are talking about the lights on Oliver Street. We want it to be dark. We live on Oliver Street. We like the land, open land, the dark. We don't want a bunch of street lamps and the noise of traffic, but we want it controlled, the speeding controlled. But you know, you talk about sidewalks and lights, that just makes it more commercial. We live here because we like the rural, we like the open land space. How did the Easthampton owns this property. They let it decline. You talk about having a property manager. There is not going to be a property manager living on site that 24 hours a day is available to keep that, you know, in order. That isn't going to happen. It doesn't happen. All these other. You talk about the veterans home with the big statue there, Sergeant's home on Northampton. They're all in disrepair. The SMOC let things go in disrepair. And the city didn't, the oversight of the city wasn't there. Why? The city owned property. They're not taking care of their property. They let them run it to this damage that it is, and you're going to let it be damaged until it needs to be ransacked. You can put housing in there. What about senior housing in that front building and that building alone, not buildings out back, not additional things? You're going forward, you're barreling ahead. You're not being open, transparent. You're not, because you've already had meetings. Why is this a 5 o'clock thing on video only? Where's the public space for the public forum to be in a building in public space? People can't, 5 o'clock, we're working. We can't get on Google Meet and Zoom meetings. It's a terrible forum, and it's not fair to the public. The city just isn't overseeing this properly.
Thank you for the additional comments, Carol. I'm going to turn to back to Trish Heed.
Hi, thanks so much for letting us speak again. I think my biggest concern that I keep hearing throughout all of this is the answers of we don't know, we don't know, we don't know, and we won't know until it's no longer in our hands. Because if I understand correctly, this is talking about transferring ownership to Valley CDC, if I understand correctly. So we won't know any of these answers till this is already a done deal. At which point we'll have, I mean, let's be honest, we'll have extremely little. I know they want to have meetings with the homeowners, but in all honesty, we'll have very little say in the matter once this is a done deal and ownership is transferred to this company. I mean, I don't know all of their properties, and I would love if maybe Jessica could make that available to us, because I would love to drive around and see some of your other properties to see exactly what we're getting ourselves into, because I've seen Parsons Place. And unless I'm mistaken, Parsons Place is your property. And the way the front of Parsons Place looks would not be the way that I would want the front of the town farm to look. So I would love, if we could have a list of your properties that we might be able to drive around and take a look at and see exactly what we would be getting into with a partnership with you, because we're just being told, accept us. We've been around in the community for, 36 years. Just because you're around doesn't mean, no offense, I don't, but there's very few people who can do this and turn a profit, even as a nonprofit, in doing this to make it continue to go forward. So, I don't think it's asking too much if we want to know exactly who ownership of something that currently belongs to the town, and was deeded that way and was, very, in the deeds that I'm looking at, it was made very apparent that it wanted it to stay that way, wanted to stay a historic place with a certain, a certain mission, and that being converted to something else, and the ownership of it being transferred out of the town's hands, which I understand the town is not, they can't manage low-income housing. I completely understand that. That's not exactly where you go. That's not your forte. You don't have in a small town like this, you're already stretched thin. You don't have that ability. But just turning that over to someone and saying, hey, turn it over, and then you'll get all the answers once it's already been approved and we really have no say in the matter, is extremely, extremely concerning to me as a citizen of Easthampton. Thanks so much.
So I can respond to Parsons. Parsons is not a Valley-owned property. It is managed by Wayfinders. So we went into a partnership for Parsons. We identified the site as Valley. We took the lead in the permitting process. We participated in the construction piece of it. But at the end of the day, Valley at that time was not at a capacity where we had the property management capability to take on a project of that size. So we partnered with Wayfinders, and they are the property management of that site. So Valley does not property manage that. In terms of our list of properties, if you go to our website, you can see a listing of all of the properties that we have. We have rental applications that are available for all of our sites. So that should give you a good look at what we have developed, and then what we have also in the pipeline for projects in Northampton. We have 2 projects that are underway. We also have other projects in other communities. So all that information's on our website. I encourage you to go and
So
and look.
can I just ask you a really quick question, Jessica? My quick question would just be, it sounds like, because I saw Sargent's home has now been transferred to Wayfinders, Parsons Place has been transferred to Wayfinders. What's to keep you from transferring this to Wayfinders and us be in the exact same situation with this property?
So we just completed a project in Amherst called East Gables that we've permitted, built, and we own, and we are property managing that. That has been one of our property that is outside of partnership with Wayfinders. We are in a situation as an organization where we have the capability to do that now, and that is the plan moving forward for all of our properties. We have a robust property management company called HMR. We work with them. They are fantastic, actually, with tenants. They're more than just property managers. They really do care a lot about the tenants themselves and do a fabulous job on that one-on-one with tenants. I know nobody wants to believe me, but I'm telling you what my truth is and what I've seen with HMR. So we do have a property management company that we work with closely, and this proposed development would be similar to how we are managing our properties moving forward. So East Gables, we have property management staff that's there. And then we also have a resident services coordinator. So they're a separate position. They work under HMR. Together combined, they are a full-time position Monday through Friday. They know if a tenant has a situation, they know who to call. There's emergency numbers that are available. If somebody needs to show up on the weekend to attend something, they do that. So it's not that we just like build and walk away. It's in our mission to make sure that people are successful in life. And what we find is if we help people in the right way, they move on from being in an affordable unit to being a homeowner. So really our goal is to help lift people up, to get them into a stable housing so they can not worry about the shelter over their head every night, and they can focus on getting a job, making sure they have enough groceries on the table. Like if you don't have a roof over your head, that's like the thing that you're worrying about every day, and you can't focus on the other thing. So get somebody into a house, and then we help provide that support to make sure that they are moving on and successful. And some of these things are hard. They're hard.
Right. Well, and that's an amazing mission. And I applaud you all for doing that. But basically what you're saying is this is an untested thing for you guys, basically, with this HMR and going forward, doing your own property management. You've said this is something that's untested. So again,
no. Being done right now in East Gables with HMR and a resident.
And how long has it been going on? Just out of curiosity.
We had tenants move in September.
Okay, so I think we can all honestly admit that it's an untested thing, that we're turning this over to you guys who in the past, the things that you've developed have been turned over to Wayfinders, which I've seen them. I'm not saying all of them. I'm just the ones that I know of that you mentioned. I know the condition of, because I know where they are, Parsons and Sargent House, and I know the conditions of those. So what I'm saying is this is something that you've done in the past, and what you're asking us is to just turn this property over to you, because this is transfer of ownership. So this property be transferred to you. And would there be things written into it that said that you would, or is this something that just all of this could change and your partnership with HMR disintegrate, it not be as great as you think since it's only been tested September? I mean, these are all just real. You have to understand these are all real concerns about what's going to happen after it's there. Because you all can, You all can walk away. We as homeowners can't. This is our home. This is, so, you know, and like I said, I'm not against it being used in the spirit of which it was used, which we said is what, 12 or 13 properties. And I'm assuming that's something that's not of interest to you, is something to do something on a smaller scale.
We could try to look at it, but what it makes it really difficult is anything under 20 units, the operation costs of a building are very high.
Okay.
And
okay, that makes sense.
Collecting a lot of rent, and this is probably what happened with Smock, is when you're not collecting enough rent to cover your operating costs, then you have problems.
That makes total sense. So in all honesty, as a freestanding facility, it really can't support itself because it just isn't big enough. Okay.
Probably
well,
not.
that's good to understand, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
I appreciate understanding that. Okay, thank you.
Trish,
I appreciate it.
If you want to reach out to me directly via email, I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you.
Jessica, do we have your email? We have Jamie's. Do we have your email?
It's ja@valleycdc.org, and it's also on the website.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I so appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Trish. I'm going to make you a viewer again, and then we will turn to Jessica LaValle.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I want to go back to my main points is that I really don't think that that the Historical Commission should and will accept what you're planning. Just because the restrictions on the property specifically say no subdividing, no buildings, no building onto the existing landscape, no changing the walls, no sealing off or opening up walls in the property. I just don't think that is a viable space for what you're trying to do. And what everyone else has been saying prior to this, I completely agree with. It's not the right community because we're so rural and there's no resources out this way to support the low income families that you want to put into this property. I think the better use of the property would be keeping it as a historical property, making it a museum. Like James said, maybe making it some sort of like gardening or like maybe even a gardening educational place for people to learn how to garden. Something that could sustain our community better than what you're planning.
Thank you, Jessica. Just to respond to the historic preservation restriction, what it says is that you can't make any of those changes without going through the Mass Historic Commission's approval process. And that is what we are seeking to do. We're not making any changes without getting their approval and permission. And, you know, essentially the design development that we are applying for this grant has the timelines built into it to give Mass Historic time to respond and make changes to the project. So that way we can propose a project that does meet their historic standards.
So in terms of that, the restrictions would have to be changed that are already existing on the property.
And that's up to Mass Historic whether or not they want to change the restrictions. But right now the restrictions are explicit about what they allow you to do without consulting with them, and they're explicit about what they require you to do for consultation if you're going to go do something outside of what they allow. And that's the process that we're following.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
Hi, can I just ask two questions? One for you actually, Ms. Webb, and one for you, Ms. Allen. So now that you have the community coming out in this meeting here, how do you make a decision? How is a decision made about whether to move forward with this? Or as you can hear from the majority of the community in the surrounding area that are opposed to it, how do you make that decision? What impact does the community coming onto this forum that you invited us on have on the decision? And who makes that final decision? That's my question for you. And I do have one for Jessica afterwards, if I could, please.
Okay. So the decision to move forward, this is it's an administrative decision that the application is being developed by the planning department. The mayor is the one who signs off on this application. It is a political decision for the mayor to decide whether or not she wants to move forward with it. So she is in this call and listening to the entire presentation and listening to all of the comments and the responses and the questions. And so this is, at the end of the day, it's her decision, it's her administration, and it's the grant agency's decision as to whether or not they want to award the grant. We will take all of the comments and concerns and questions as part of this application. We have a transcript and a video of this meeting. They will review this and figure out if this is what they want to fund. Going forward, if it's approved, there's additional permitting processes that would have to go through other boards and committees, such as the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Board, to determine the land use, the changes regarding the number of units, and some of the safety concerns that were brought up. But we are, until the mayor says don't go forward with this anymore, then we're going to continue moving forward with this application. We have to do something to save this building. If we don't do something, it's going to fall down. It's going to be an eyesore. It's possible that the state would come after us because letting the building deteriorate and fall down would be a violation of the historic preservation restriction. The affordable housing restriction needs, the one that's existing now requires it to be full of it requires us to make a good faith effort to use it. And if we're going to just abandon that restriction, they could also, go to litigation. If you'd like to ask your question to Julie, to Jessica.
Oh, yes. I appreciate your answer on that. So if we wanted the mayor to answer for this, how do we get her to answer? Is she if she's online, can she answer that? If she's listening, can she speak? Or is that just something like at the city council that we should address?
You can email mayor@easthamptonma.gov.
Well, this is just because we're online public forum if she was on here, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, she was in the meeting earlier. I don't know if she's still here. It's been 2.5 hours, so she may have turned off the meeting.
Okay. And so I appreciate that. I'll have to send her a message then. And then Jessica, if you could answer this question, and this is kind of piggybacking off of what somebody else was saying, as far as the darkness and the safety of the sidewalks, you guys didn't quite address that at all. I don't know if that's in your planning, because that is outside of the property area, but it is on public area. So who would that fall under?
It could fall under, the lighting would definitely fall under the permitting process. So typically we meet dark sky standards for any lighting. As I think some people have noted, I think there's this middle ground that we would have to find that's in terms of providing enough light for safety, but not over lighting an area. Given that there is a lot of wildlife there, I would want to be conscious and really thoughtful about how the lighting is done to not make it a distraction to wildlife corridors or migration patterns or anything like that. So typically what is required for any developer, not just affordable housing, but any developer in the city who's moving forward with a plan, is that you can't have the light go beyond the property boundaries. So you pick certain lighting fixtures that are energy efficient, dark sky standards. There's lighting fixtures that are very specifically stamped for international dark sky certified. So those are the types of fixtures that we typically go with for our projects. But I think there's often, as I've seen in my experience, there's not necessarily even on a permitting board, there may be some inconsistencies of what somebody feels like is lighted enough versus not lighted enough. So again, that would be part of our permitting package if we got to that point, and we would put a lighting proposal together that would be up for discussion by the board and would be vetted by the public during the public hearing process. So that's about the lighting. Sidewalks, I'd like to go and take a look and see what the existing network is there at all and where the sidewalk kind of ends. There could be some partnership with the city. Again, if this decides to move forward, there are grants available that provide infrastructure improvements that a municipality can apply for that are to partner with affordable housing projects. So there's grant opportunities out there, but again, it would have to be a coordinated effort between Valley and the city to see what makes sense, input from city engineers, DPW, what makes the most sense? Does the city already have a sidewalk improvement plan? Is there already something in place for this area? I have no idea. So these are great things that have been brought up by this forum, and I appreciate that because I've made notes of it and things to sort of research and think about. But like I said, I don't have an exact plan in place until I kind of go do a little bit more research and just sort of figure out what's going on out there.
And then just lastly, and correct me because I could be totally wrong on this, because sometimes you watch the city council meetings and it's a lot going on. And when they approved the CPA funding for the last $100,000, was it you or somebody kept saying at the meeting, they said that they would be coming back for more money, that this wasn't just the first amount. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I was not at the meeting, so it wasn't me that made that statement, but I will say not just for, I would say any affordable housing development. It's very expensive to construct. We've seen after the pandemic, the construction pricing has tripled in cost, what it takes to build a building.
So who's paying for this? Is it us or for you or
So what we typically do for affordable housing developments is it usually takes somewhere between 8 to 12 different sources of funding to pull together a funding package that covers the cost of construction and the soft costs, the architects, the engineers, the attorneys, the accountants, all of the things that we're required to do under the affordable housing laws that we have to do. So I'd say generally the split in terms of the cost is about 75 to 80% of the total budget is for construction. And then the rest of it is to cover all the other things. That's kind of typically how I see it split out.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. So I guess my question is, how much is it going to be out of Valley is going to come up with all this money, right? You're not going to coming back to the city for this money.
We may end up having to for CPA. So there's only so much that we can there's certain cap limits on the state funding. There's only so much we can ask for because this funding is so competitive. There are so many developments that are applying for these funds and there's limited resources. So the state has set certain cap levels. And so the caps haven't caught up with the cost of construction. They used to be kind of more consistent. Now there's kind of a huge gap. So I would suspect that this project would have to come back to the city, probably the CPA, which is one of the three things that the CPA can fund is affordable housing.
Okay.
Yep. And the other projects are doing the same thing in the city.
So then my question to Jamie would be, why wouldn't we invest it alone take that CPA money, invest it in something that the whole community would like to have instead of giving it to Valley Medical. You like how I said that? Instead of giving it, I'm so sorry. Instead of giving it to them, would there be any ideas that the community could come up with to utilize that CPA money and keep that within the city property in lieu of signing it over to somebody else and getting other people's ideas? Because we're already spending quite a bit of money with CPA money. So why wouldn't we I'm just looking to self-invest.
I mean, so Valley has 2 full-time employees who just are developing affordable housing projects. If we were to try to do this in-house, we would need to have 2 new staff members who are developing affordable housing. It's a whole range of
well, I'm not saying
it's a whole range of expertise that we currently don't have. And going forward, after this project's done, we'd need to lay them off. Because of the affordable housing restrictions on this property and the historic preservation restrictions on this property, we really don't have any other choices but to proceed in this manner.
I see. That clarified it for me. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we're going to skip down to Amir Ross. You're muted.
Hi.
You're back on.
Hi, I just want to be really transparent. I am on Social Security disability. I live below the poverty line, and I own my house, and I would welcome sidewalks. I was struck in a crosswalk in another state, and I had a stop sign, and I was still struck. Shit happens, is what I'm trying to say. And I would still support affordable housing because I would be one of those people that would apply for it if I didn't have my own home. And I can't stress enough how important it is that we allow each other to grow and evolve. And I welcome dialogue with my neighbors around that, because if we don't grow, we're doomed. We're doomed. And I don't want to disregard people's feelings about what they have experienced. I want to acknowledge that. And I want to also allow people to be able to grow and learn to trust, and that takes steps. And so I want to point out that this issue with this building happened before this administration, before a lot of those city councilors were even on there. So this is one of 4 projects, and we're also talking about it being only 10% of the affordable housing overall, which again, I would be one of those people as someone who's disabled and living on Social Security disability insurance. And I appreciate somebody saying, hey, we'll make your garden. And I can say, I can't tether it. I cannot maintain it. And I feel as really rich that I have a home to come home to. And I think that right there gives everybody a sense of pride to start with, and meeting people where they are, with acknowledging traumas and wanting to hear that, and then step off together and do some learning and trusting about process here. Because again, this thing is so far off in the future. I'd like to think that we can evolve around process in doing this, because this is a very slow process project because of all the layers. And the Valley CDC helped me buy a home, took their course, and the Valley CDC helped me when I started my business that lasted 20 years, and I had to retire because of disability. So I freaking heart Valley CDC, because access is really, really important. And that's what I feel like affordable housing is. And it includes people like me and my friends, and I would stand by them and other people in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ami. I'm going to move to JP. He hasn't spoken yet.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Bear with me a second here. Thank you. I'm so happy to see so many people involved in working on solving the community's problems. Great to have the Valley CDC here, the neighbors together in a meeting talking about this. I just wish that we were able to be at a point in the process where, well, it sounds like we're ready to spend $100,000 and somewhere between $500,000 and $900,000 on designs and plans and ideas. When the last I heard, well, I think it was somewhere in the area of $2.5 million now in today's dollars to bring the property up to code. maybe a little more to go ahead and make it a little better. Depends on how much. Well, let's look at the actual plans and talk about that. There were a lot of creative ideas. Avery, I really appreciate your creative thinking in this process and wanting to bring the labor of the community together. That to me seems to be a helpful way of making things happen. I do know that, and I'll try to be brief, but please excuse me if I go a little over 3 minutes. Let's deal first with the CPA. It seems to me that the cost to do affordable housing is so great that the Valley CDC will keep coming back to the city and say, well, geez, let's partner together on the sidewalks, or let's partner together. We need some CPA funds for affordable housing to make this work. We need funds not only for affordable housing, but for historic preservation purposes. So there's really two pots we can pull from to contribute for this specific property, because it is historic and it does entail affordable housing. So I'm wondering how much money in the end, well, the CPA will be asked to provide, and whether it makes more sense today to sit back and say, well, let's plan for our future. Maybe that money is better spent in actually rehabbing the building up to the way it meets code. My guess is that an organization will come forward. SMOC is still operating in town, for example. Folks who are going to be putting in managing the 3 schools that will be developing into affordable housing, they may be interested in managing a property here at the town lodging. The other, let's just step away for a moment and look at the SROs being important. What I hear from the whole group here today is that the concept of the SROs, it's been here for 100, 120 years. That's a model that still folks have a need for. I know in 2019, there was a report came out from a request for CPA funds, and I believe it was signed by John Tatro, who said that the SRO component was an important mix, and that's why there should be CPA funds used to do the capital needs form. So I'm not sure that we've let go of the SRO model. I know you have a lot of neighbor support for the SRO model, for the folks who have utilized this property. I know there's a force of people who would like to be able to contribute to that process. I just wonder if there's any time to do that when it sounds like, well, if we do this or do that, now the this grant funding source is going to be giving you up to $950,000. Well, the request was originally for up to $950,000. That puts us down the road spending a lot of money. And what will they look like? Will they be the SRO single room model, or are we talking this is going to be changed to a studio model? And really the only way we can really do the studio model, it seems, is if we build 18 more units, which then leads us to the conclusion of, well, how many people is that? That really changes it from a few people living on the site to somewhere, I don't know, 75, 100. And that requires folks to be walking into town or calling for the bus. Well, what do folks do if they need medicine right away? What do they do if they need to go to the doctors or to shop for a particular item? I think the downtown areas where we're having affordable housing now in the 3 schools, on Ferry Street, on Main Street, near the Big Y, and Walgreens, make a lot of sense where it's near urgent care. folks could walk to those areas, and they don't need to call for the bus. I guess I'm thinking that maybe we got to step back a bit and rethink our plan, and it would make sense for the city. In terms of the sidewalks and the lighting, I know for sure that there will have to be sidewalks and lighting if we proceed with this project. There isn't a single sidewalk. Let me help you out, Jessica, in this one. I know you said, is there sidewalks out there? We need to kind of do a survey. I'll tell you, there isn't a single sidewalk in the area along any of the streets until you get to West Street. And that means that there's almost two-thirds of a mile to a mile from the lodging house to West Street, and then more space in order to get into the center of town. So I'm not sure anybody's going to be really walking to the center of town easily. And you're saying that half the people won't have cars, so they're going to rely on some other method. I think there are a lot of questions here. I do appreciate all the effort, because we do have a population that is different from the typical affordable housing population. These are folks who need single rooms. I know one of the callers was talking about, I think it was Natalie, was talking about veterans. I know veterans need to be in the mix, and SROs for veterans, I hear a lot of talk about in various communities. I appreciate all the folks who lived here for a long time and those who've only lived here for a short time, taking an interest at this point in the process. And I know that everyone's going to stay tuned very carefully on this subject. So I will pause for a moment, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk about this matter, because it's good to air the whole thing in public.
So I'll just respond to the SRO question. So we do enhanced SROs, which means that it's a kitchenette and a bathroom within the room itself. It's not a studio. It's called an enhanced SRO. The congregate model that you are referring to is not funded by the state anymore. They don't provide funding through the affordable housing funds that are available at the state level for that type of housing. So it would be difficult for anybody to get money to continue that unless you decided to take out a large loan, bond, and decide as a city that you'd like to build in that model and then maintain and manage that property. So just wanted to provide that clarification that funding doesn't exist for that type of housing anymore. So just wanted to put that out there.
In terms of building that type of housing, or in terms of maintaining that type of housing?
In terms of new construction, you would be requesting funds from the state to do a rehab, which is new construction. That type of model is no longer funded at the state level. It's not a priority for them. Enhanced SROs, yes. So putting in a kitchenette, putting in a bathroom, those are models. That's what we just completed at East Gables. It's an enhanced SRO project, 28 apartments. Ranging inside from around 260 square feet to over 300, depending if it's handicap accessible or not. So, so that is a model that is fundable, and that is a model that exists. The congregate style, where you have a common kitchen and common bathroom, that is not a type of housing that the affordable housing funders at the state level look for anymore. It was something that was done in the past. It's not a priority now. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Jessica, while we have you here, is the East Gables you mentioned, I know you're very proud of that project. Is it on a bus route, a regular bus route, and is it near any kinds of shopping or other services, pharmacies? I don't know where East Gables is in Amherst. It's a new project.
It's located on Route 9, right next to the Amherst athletic fields.
It's on Route 9 within walking distance of the shopping plazas and...
Sure, but the opposition to that project also didn't think that was adequate enough. So, you know, I hear everybody, and we agree. It is a site that is a little bit out farther than what we typically look at. we wouldn't even consider this site if it wasn't already on an existing bus route. I know that it says on demand on the PVTA, but it's already part of the route, the standard route. It's not like you just have to, Nashwanik only comes if you call. They have a standard loop. It's listed as part of their standard loop. And I think there's a conversation to be had with PVTA to increase services there. So I don't want to get in a back and forth now. I mean, it seems like, you know, we've been here for almost 3 hours, and I'm happy to, JP, you've had information from me for a while, so I'm happy to have a conversation with you individually to answer all of the questions that you have. You know, you've been part of this conversation since July, so any questions that you might have, I'd be happy to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with you.
I'm sorry, Jessica, when you mentioned July, it brings me back to, in July, I was focused on spending time with me.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Megan passed away in September. She had a brain tumor in January.
I'm so sorry, Counselor.
When you say it's been available to us.
Understood, Counselor. I apologize. I'm so sorry.
Jamie, thank you.
Thank you, JP. If you have anything else, otherwise we'll go to just a never-ending list of raised hands. So I think at this point, everybody has had an opportunity to speak once, even twice. So unless there's like new questions that haven't been brought up or new information that's needed, let's try to keep it quick. It is now entering the 3rd hour of this meeting. So, Jessica? How about Carol? Carol, you're muted.
I know. I guess I don't have anything more to say. When we can't make this be an open forum where the public can come in person and not be cut off and not seen when we're on this Google Meet thing and such short notice in meetings, it just isn't right. So it's not on a regular bus route. It's not on a regular bus route, for Pete's sake. They have to call when they need a ride. It isn't, and we don't want it to be on a regular bus route. Then you're going back to the traffic thing. So I guess I'm disgustedly done.
Thank you for that comment. Jessica?
Hi, yes. I would like just to say, to end whatever I'm going to say regarding this whole thing, I think that a lot of people in this community are against this whole thing. And I think that people will probably picket at town hall because this just doesn't seem like a viable option for anybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Ami, is there something where you'd like to? How about Sean?
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah, keep it short and sweet. Living by housing already, you mentioned that, vehicles would be, very rare for these residents to have. It's not uncommon from my perspective where I live currently by housing for them to have 3 or 4 vehicles where I live currently, and I would just add that to the discussion for everybody to consider. And that is a fact for anybody that wants to drive by either Sunset, Eli, John Street, or South. And I'll leave that as it may. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Avery?
Hi, yeah. I really am blown away by the fact that the mayor was supposed to be sitting in and the majority was speaking and somebody asked to hear the mayor and her response to the fact that the majority was saying one thing specifically, but then the mayor conveniently wasn't there because she had other things to do and we had been here for 2.5 hours. And I just want to point out, it's not like she's like the mayor or anything, like it's her job or anything. And also, I want to point out that the lodging house was deeded to the people of Easthampton. It wasn't deeded to City Hall, it was deeded to the people. We're the people. And we overwhelmingly have spoken this evening. And the mayor conveniently isn't here to listen or respond, which is great because elections do come around. But, I just want to point these things out. These conveniences of it getting run down over 20 years or 25 years. And now you got to sell it 6 years before the affordable housing runs out. And there's a lot of conveniencies going on here. And you can't conveniently tell us about how much or how much time you're going to come back for CPA funds. There's a lot of conveniencies. Also, I'm sorry to JP for having to listen to what I heard earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Avery. Chris? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Listening tonight, there's a couple of big takeaways for me here. Number one, I live right around. The overwhelming majority of us who are going to be affected by this development don't want it. I'm sorry that you guys kind of get stuck carrying the bag on this, but I know personally, once this process goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals or to the, past where we're at now, we have very little chance of stopping it. So for Jessica to come out and be like, we'll have one-on-one conversations with you, that's all fine and good, but all you're trying to do at that point is butter us up and tell us how this is going to be great or how this isn't going to affect us. It's not actually hearing the concerns of the neighbors at the time. And I think people have put forth several ideas that we could explore with the existing house. And if it costs $2.5 or $3 million to fix up, and we're already going to be outlaying $950,000 or $564,000, whatever you're looking at, I don't necessarily see that avenue is closed, because I've also heard that no one here is opposed to restoring the town lodging to its original intended purpose of low-income housing. What everyone's opposed to is the addition of more. Everybody's fine with the single room occupancy, or if that doesn't work anymore due to state regulations, keeping it at 12 to 15 studio apartments or whatever. We need to, as a community, come together and figure out how that's going to work. Not just toss this off to a developer, whether they're nonprofit or not, because we're the ones who are going to get stuck with it in 10 years if, VCG goes under, or they decide that it's no longer feasible for them to operate it under, new constraints, and they turn it over to wayfinders or whatever. There's no sort of long-term focus in any of this. It's really seemed like a very short-sighted, like the building's falling down, we need to fix it now. I agree with all of that, but we need to come up with a way to make that existing building work without the additional stuff. And if that's hard, that's fine. But we're a creative community, and we can access the resources in the community to come up with some solution, because having 75 people there walking down Oliver Street, I mean, it's not going to work. Like, it's going to totally change the nature of our little area here. And we live in this section of town because we like that rural sort of vibe. And while, you might have dark sky friendly lighting and things like that, you're still not going to mitigate the fact that you're throwing in 125 to 250 people into, whatever it is, a 4-acre plot in the center of it. So, I just hope that, you take the voices of the neighbors into account when you decide to move forward with this, and realize that, we don't want it. So, I mean, that's really all I have to say. And, I know it's been an excessively long meeting, and I thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Your comments have been recorded. Nate? Nate, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. My name's Nate Millard. I live at 286 Loudville Road. I guess my main concern isn't so much the affordable or low income housing. It's, I've heard numbers of 2.5 million to fix this building up or whatnot. Maybe it's better off just to go to whatever government entity or whatnot and just say, hey, it's beyond repair. We'd be better off just building something new, something modern, something fresh, something that fits with the neighborhood. Not that the building wouldn't be nice fixed up, but that's a lot of money. And I almost wonder if you could get better bang for your buck with maybe even better parking for everyone, with something modern, something more efficient, whatnot, that just fits in with that area. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Nate. Just to quick respond, we cannot, under the historic preservation restriction, demolish the building. And that's just like a non-starter for Mass Historic. They will not let us go down that route. Yeah, thank you. All right, and Emmy? Emmy, you're muted. All right, Carol?
People need to contact the Mass Historic Society Association, and need to contact those state agencies to help prevent this from going forward, to help the historic value of this, to contact the Mass Historical Society to help with this.
Thank you. Emmy? You're muted, Emmy.
Yeah, I got it. You guys mentioned, thank you for the presentation. I know you guys are trying your best. I understand your point of view. I understand the mayor's point of view, that they financially cannot handle this building. They can't handle the affordable housing. They don't have the budget. I understand how it makes sense for them to hand over the property to Valley CDC. They essentially want to relieve themselves of the stress. At the same time, they want to add affordable housing to meet the numbers we get that. We get that as a community. When you talk about the Massachusetts Historical Committee, I think that's where a lot of people may not understand how much you guys are depending on the HMC to say yes to what you guys are proposing. It's so extreme. The changes that Jessica and Valley CDC are wanting to do are so extreme and so off from what the deeds and the restrictions are saying, that for the HMC to say yes, that will be a challenge. Maybe they need to say yes because they feel the pressure of affordable housing needs. But at the same time, this is the very last historical lodging house in the United States. And HMC, their passion, they have archaeologists, they have historians, they have architects. They want to save these old historic buildings that are vanishing. And for the Valley CDC to come in and want to do XYZ, and when Jessica says, oh, we'll have to do a survey of Oliver Street, that is so offensive to our community, because we know where we live, we know the challenges, and these people have no clue what they're saying. They're gung-ho, they're ready to make a dent into the affordable living. They're using all the right words because we need to help people, but they don't understand that this historical registered on the National Registry, this landmark with this community and this rural setting on Oliver Street is not the correct setting. Now, you had mentioned the words Plan B in the beginning of the meeting, and the mayor, if she's listening or not, she needs to understand that there needs to be a Plan B, because the community is willing to work with them, work with the city, and work with the Massachusetts Historical Committee to keep this building, this land, the way it was intended since 1890. The first deed in 1890 did say that we are the successors and heirs of Jean Gros is the man, and his wife Cecile. We are the successors and heirs. So the mayor, if I may address myself to her directly, Mayor, that you have an obligation to listen to us as well, because we count, we vote you in, and I think it's best if we all get together, work together. Maybe someone can match the money. Maybe we can help fund the money. We can all work together and find creative solutions. But to ram this down our throats and to put people who need affordable housing in the middle of the country, Jessica has no clue. And it, like I said, it is so offensive the way she is talking. She has no clue about the infrastructure. If a mom of 3 kids needs milk in the middle of the night, well, how is she going to get to Big E to get it? She's going to call the bus, or you're going to let the bus go back and forth on Oliver Street? All these people who live here, who appreciate rural living, you have the empty schools in Easthampton. You have so many other opportunities. I think the mayor just has her eyes set on this because she wants to get rid of it, and then she wants the tax dollars for it. And we all understand this, and we all see this. And we cannot continue pretending that it's going to be okay. There are other options. There's other creative ways to look at this. And we do need a Plan B. And like someone said, we can pick it. We can go further than that. And it's for also the people for affordable housing. Why do you want to put them in the middle of the country, in a country setting? I'm for helping people. I was a teacher. I love helping people and lifting them up and making sure. But this is the wrong place for them to feel successful. And the last thing I want to say is there's project manager Monday through Friday, but on Saturday and Sunday, On the weekends, there's nobody. Jessica said there's no one on the weekends. There are so many missing holes to this. And I know for a fact there are bodies buried behind that building. So when you do your archaeological dig with the money from the CPA, which should be going to the building itself, you're going to be wasting so much money when you should just be putting it into the building and working with the community mayor, working with us. Please work with us. And we will be in contact with the Massachusetts Historical Committee if we need. This is very preliminary. Let everybody know this is very preliminary. Nothing is set in stone. No one has said yes to them yet. And we need to just go forward and work together as a community and with the mayor, with this government, without animosity, with care and love for everybody. Love for the people who need the housing. Love for us as a community who have lived here for 30, 50 years, who love this community. So listen to us, please, Mayor. Listen to us as people who voted you in. Listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further people interested in raising any more comments. So I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and providing us with your comments, your concerns, your support, and your opposition. We will be taking this all into account. And if you'd like to email me or join the sign up to get project updates as we go, you can email me at jwebb@easthamptonma.gov. And I really appreciate you all taking the time to come out tonight.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.